you have a direct link to what's streaming that you could like? Could you send it to me by email?
Sure.
Okay. Just mic it, Etsy. Thank you.
Okay. Typically a little more animated during these.
What's it? You are?
You'll see. Yeah, you'll see.
I gotta tell you, the crowd that dissipates over time throughout the day is not awesome.
Hey, you know what? They got jobs to do, man.
Yeah, that's the hard thing. We've actually had a number of workshops recently, mostly by like internal engineers doing things, but for a number of hours throughout the day. So there's
like,
probably some degree of fatigue.
You've got stuff. Yeah. I totally appreciate that. Like it's a long day for a lot of people, and I've been in my fair share of workshops, and I'm whooped as an attendee. Right? So it's just like, again, like you're checking your email, you're trying to get shit done during the day. It's like, all right, I gotta go do some stuff. You know.
I was happy with the folks who showed up. There's a couple of people who were very mobile-centric and a couple of people who were like, not at all. What we're trying to do is just keep getting more and more people in the advocates for it.
That's what it's really about. You know, it sounds like the right pieces are in place. You got specialists and evangelists, and you understand that it's not like
you got me just having to keep talking about it.
that's great.
Hello, hello. Good evening. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Etsy, another installment of Code as Craft. We've had a couple of recent Code as Craft talks that have been a little bit more mobile or front-end focused. I assume that a lot of you may be new. We have quite a wide variety of topics here. How many people are new to Code as Craft, never been to an event? Welcome. Thank you for coming. So tonight we have a speaker who, since you've read about him, probably doesn't need an introduction, so I'm going to give him one anyways. Brad Frost has worked at agency work, has done mobile strategy and technology for a number of different clients, has seen just about everything. He's probably got like 1 degree of separation from almost every important strategist and technologist in the mobile space. He's a signer on the Future Friendly Manifesto, has created multiple WTF websites, and is here to talk about responsive web design. So please welcome Brad Frost.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Hey, guys. Can you hear me all right? Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me here. Hello, world, too. And this is being streamed live, so. My name is Brad Frost. The underscore is silent. Speedos. Oh, of course my cursor doesn't want to. Oh, did my slides froze and my computer decided to go to sleep, so thank you. Thank you, computer. How's everybody doing tonight? Wow, really? Yeah, there's a lot of first-timers coming here. That's pretty cool. Code as Craft. Hey, you guys might need to bear with me here for a second just because my computer decided to freeze on me, which is great. So, responsive web design, huh, guys? My computer is not so responsive. Thank you for that. And give me 1 second. I was here earlier today in this same spot giving a talk for 6+ hours. So I think I outlasted my computer, so. How about the Mets?
Is it just froze on you?
Yeah, this is like straight up.
You can't force quit it.
What's a force quit command?
These two? Yeah.
Ah, keynote, not responding. Force quit, thank you. Okay, let's try this again. Oh, cancel. Let's try this again.
Hey.
Speedos! Speedos, guys. Hey, thanks a lot. Thanks for hanging in there. Man, this is off to a great start. Yes. So I'm here to talk about Speedos. Velcro, jet skis. Also, this is just, that little glitch was just to add to the ambiance of randomness. Rollerblades, Kleenex, Band-Aids, aspirin, thermoses, dumpsters, Google, Jell-O, lava lamp. That's it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me. Believe it or not, all these things have something in common. While they might appear random, they're all generic trademarks. Generic trademarks began their life defining a very specific product or service. But over time, their meaning sort of became genericized, for lack of a better word. And because of this, we have things like generic cornflakes, right? Once upon a time, owned by the Kellogg's company, but over time, the word cornflakes began being used and sort of permeated into the everyday lexicon of everybody, and as a result, they lost their sort of trademark over that, and sort of, you know, became a generic term. So because of this, we get generic cornflakes. Because of this, we also get to Google things in Bing, right? Or my personal favorite, photoshopping in MS Paint. That's an original work right there. So we're used to this, though, in the web world, too, because, you know, we have terms like AJAX, which once upon a time, and still does, stands for asynchronous JavaScript and XML, and also HTML5, right, which is, of course, the next edition of the HTML spec. But as we all probably know and cringe every time we hear them, they've sort of become synonymous with all that is new and shiny on the web. So this is a bummer, sort of. If you're a web designer, you sort of cringe a little bit every time you see somebody talk about HTML5 and they have no idea what they're talking about. But as Jeff Croft says, he says, they argued about the term AJAX until they were blue in the face, they being the standard D says. But in the end, no one would argue that AJAX as a buzzword wasn't a good thing for our industry, right? So the fact that it became synonymous with all that's new and shiny on the web didn't hurt us any. Enter responsive web design. So the responsive web design was created by Ethan Marcotte in his seminal article on A List Apart. Became a book this year, coming out with a movie. I can't wait. Right? But as a lot of people know, unless you've been living under a rock for the last couple years, responsive web design is comprised of these three components: fluid grids, flexible media, and media queries, which is sort of responsive web design's secret sauce, right? So it's these three front-end development techniques that, you know, when put together, creates these flexible, responsive layouts. And so that's really it. That's really all there is to it. But here's a problem. Ethan's a really smart guy. Worked for Harvard, smart guy. A lot of the proponents of responsive web design, smart people as well. They know that there's more to it than this. But the problem is that because responsive web design was so well defined as these sort of three components, a lot of people, less thoughtful people, took it as this sort of panacea, right? All we need to do is sort of sprinkle on some media queries and be like, all right, my site's mobile friendly, I'm going to lunch. All right, and on the other side, of course, opponents to this are all, you know, a little skeptical. You know, they're like, "Oh, really? That's those three things? That's all it requires?" However, it usually ends up coming out like, "Responsive web design sucks, doesn't work." It's miserable. But responsive web design starts making sense whenever you start to put it in context of this broader adaptive web design sort of strategy. Right? So at sort of the very basic level, right, responsive layouts is really just the tip of the iceberg, right? And it's a great, you know, start to a conversation, but it's certainly not the whole thing. So as we sort of plunge beneath the waterline, we realize that there's all this other stuff that we need to concern ourselves with in order to create truly amazing multi-device web experiences. So it's sort of like, you know, at face value, yeah, it's just this thing that front-end developers need to concern themselves with, and it doesn't really, you know, make a difference for the rest of, you know, the people involved in the project. But as we spend more time beneath the waterline, we realize that this is where the fundamental change is going to happen. The more we pay attention to all these different things, the better off we're going to be. But as it happens, instead of, you know, having some weird argument every time somebody says responsive web design, it's like, well, actually, It's adaptive web design, and here's the difference in there. Like, responsive web design as a buzzword has caught on. It's permeated throughout, the entire web design world and stuff and beyond. So I think that responsive web design needs to go the way of cornflakes, right? Just sort of become this generic term for creating great multi-device web experiences. So what then, beyond layout, do we need to concern ourselves with if we want to create really great web experiences in this day and age? And sort of struggling with that question, I came up with what I call the principles of adaptive web design, which I define as ubiquity, flexibility, performance, enhancement, and this general notion of being future-friendly. So we'll start with ubiquity. So this isn't the web. Once upon a time it was, hence this amazingly crusty-looking old computer, right? You can almost hear like that trying to connect to the internet. This is the web that we've been dealing with for the past 17 years or so. But all of a sudden, the web looks a lot different. We have smartphones, we have dumb phones, e-readers, tablets, netbooks, notebooks, desktops, web-enabled TVs, game consoles, a whole bunch of other stuff. So all of a sudden, the whole concept of the web becomes a whole lot bigger. When you think at it and look at it, it's a lot more diverse, right? But if you think about it, this is really just the beginning, because in addition to all the stuff we need to concern ourselves with today, all these other things are coming out right around the corner. The fabled web tweeting refrigerator, right? Microsoft actually released a car, something for your car that projects a display over your windshield. It's like a literal blue screen of death. Like to drive off a cliff. But all this stuff, we know what's happening with this, right? We know this stuff's on the market. We could sort of see what the next curve is. But perhaps what's more important than the things that we know exist now are these question marks, right? Nobody knows, not even like the best informed, not even the people that get paid to think about this stuff, know exactly where we're going to be even a year from now. But that's what we need to be designing for today, right? And whenever you think about it, all these devices can access the web, right? The power of the web is in its ubiquity, right? Tim Berners-Lee at the London Olympics, sitting awkwardly in the middle of a stadium on a computer, typed out, "This is for everybody," right? Regardless of race, religion, creed, color, mobile carrier. When you look at this picture, if you're like me, you sort of like get the wind knocked out of you a little bit, right? This is a humbling reality right here. And if you think about it, and if you want to address it, you sort of cringe a little, and it's like, really, do I need to worry about all this? It's important to understand, as Stephanie Rieger says, that diversity is not a bug. It's an opportunity, and perhaps the biggest opportunity for the web. But the problem is that too many people still think of the web on these mobile devices as sort of the web light, right? We see a lot of this stuff, right? Sorry, that page is not supported on mobile at this time. Sorry, we do not allow mobile devices on Team Madness. That's a little harsh, if I might add. Follow My Health currently requires a desktop browser. A mobile version will be available soon, giving us that false sense of hope, right? Soon? Is it soon yet? Has it happened? I don't know. CVS, this page is full of HTML website, blah, blah, blah. No Doritos for you. No image gallery for you. No story for you. Looks like you're using an unsupported browser, even though you're on a perfectly capable Android device. Pizza Hut. Keep up the great work, guys. All right, we got a really nice website dedicated to sort of informing us about how we're inadvertently contributing to human slavery in this day and age. Really valuable information, but it's got this long-winded excuse. The site was designed to be viewed on standards, desktops, laptops, and blah, 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 blah. That's unfortunate because the content's so great. This one's great. This website contains media too rich for your mobile web browser. I can't be bothered with you, peasant device, right? Be gone. This is actually Google's mobile web initiative, and it says, alternately, we suggest checking out the site from your tablet if you have one. I'm not really sure what you call that, but I'm pretty sure it's a tablet. But this one is still my favorite. This page has to be ideally opened on your laptop or desktop browser. Once you open this link on your computer, then you will have a QR code to the URL that needs to be opened on your device. That is miserable. I want to uppercut whoever wrote that in the face. Right? So the idea is that, really, mobile users are going to do anything and everything a desktop user is going to do, but it just needs to be presented in a usable way. Right? There's a lot of really, grand words thrown around about this idea. The one web principle, right? The web should be accessible to all. Thematic consistency, which the W3C made, that basically says, hey, it's all right for the experience to be different across the board, as long as the content's available. But I found it's actually a lot easier to just sort of talk about things in layman's terms, right? Give people what they want. Give people what they want, no matter how they access the web. What I mean by this is achieving content parity, right? Like, we need to provide a sound experience no matter how people are accessing the web. So this was Nike, a previous version of Nike, advertising Nike Pro Combat Hypercool 2.0. Sounds like a pretty advanced piece of technology right there. But if you go to their dedicated iPad site, you see that they're advertising something entirely different. You have this athlete section and gear up section that actually don't exist on the desktop experience. Then whenever you get into mobile, there is actually even more diversity. They have a dedicated iPhone view, and then even beyond that, you see a sort of a generic 320 view, which obviously isn't working too well. That's an absolute nightmare, right? So they recently redesigned, and looks a lot better. But as you can see, they got rid of their mobile-specific sites and their tablet-specific sites. So it really sort of begs the question, really, does content parity trump all, right? Like, this isn't a responsive site, right? This is just a desktop site rendered on a phone. And that might be okay, It's all about the access, right? So content parity trumps all. But what about mobile context, you say? What exactly is mobile context? Sorry, I know you guys probably just ate, so let me change off of that slide. Context is both quantitative and qualitative, right? We have things like screen size and connectivity, device capabilities, processing power, input methods, right? Are you on a touch screen, or are you on a hybrid, or are you, something in between? But then you also have sort of the qualitative aspects of context, right? What are your goals, and do they change if you're accessing the site from a mobile device or through a desktop computer or a tablet? Are they capable of completing the task? Do you have their full attention? Are they rushed, or are they sitting in bed? So like on-the-go mobile context is still true, right? Historically, like, mobile context has been like this hurried businessman sprinting down the street late for the bus, and he's just firing up his phone, trying to make sure that the bus is on time. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's still the case, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the only use case, right? We have all these other things. 76% of people will access it while waiting in line, right? 86% of people while watching TV. 80% of people during general downtime. 69% of people accessing in retail stores, and 39% of people while on the toilet, which, as my friend Luke says, that means that 61% of people are liars. So Stephen Hayes sort of sums all this up. He says, just make quality, relevant content with appropriate tasks and offer these to all users, then make it easy for the user to decide what it is they want to do. I think he goes on to say, like, that's like web design or something. Like, we've been like sort of putting mobile on this pedestal, but it doesn't need to be, right? So that's ubiquity. The next principle of adaptive design is that of flexibility. We see a lot of stuff like this. This website is optimized for landscape view. Please rotate your tablet. And it's like, really? This is PC Magazine. Smartphone version is currently designed for use in portrait mode. To continue, please turn your iPhone into portrait mode. That's ridiculous, right? And now in the age of responsive design, you start to see this stuff cropping up in media queries and stuff. 320 pixels, 480 pixels, 768, 1024, the fold. Oh God, the fold. But this whole idea of, you know, these specific device dimensions is just totally short-sighted. Like, I loved whenever the iPhone 5 came out. I'm like, haha, all you 480 people, right? Like, it's a little bit taller. Like, you can't count on that. Way to go. People were freaking out. This is nonsense, right? So John Alsop talks about how we need to accept the sort of ebb and flow of design. The web is inherently fluid, and that's you know, again, not a bug. That's not something to suppress. This is something that we need to embrace. Luke Wroblewski has this really nice concept of the screen continuum, wherever there really is no specific buckets per se. It's just like this sort of one, you know, screen sizes of all shapes. So in order to sort of help out in that department, I made a tool called Ish that instead of sort of focusing on distinct buckets, it's sort of what you're looking at is what I call disco mode, wherever you sort of stress test your designs to make sure that they are, you know, fully are looking good on any screen. So yeah, so that's that. So I like to say embrace the squishiness. I trademark that just in case. and I used to say, I wouldn't go to embracethesquishiness.com. I'm not really sure what you're going to find. But then my friend registered embracethesquishiness.com and put a very attractive photo on me. And of course, it's responsive. So that's flexibility. Performance is the next aspect of sound adaptive design. This is one that's really, really important. 71% mobile users expect a mobile site to load as fast, if not faster, than its desktop counterpart. And if that isn't met, a full 3/4 of people are going to bounce. They're going to leave if it takes longer than 5 seconds to load. In other words, you have 5 seconds of somebody's time. It's sort of a humbling stat right there, right? But the unfortunate reality is that the average web page just keeps growing bigger and bigger every single day. It's now at about like 1.3 megs. And what's even more troubling is that 86% of responsive designs send the same stuff down to small screen users as they do to large screen viewers. This means that all these mobile users are getting hit by downloading and rendering these huge desktop sites, right? This is a site that was featured in a magazine about like, wow, this is really great web design. But you look under the hood and you find that it weighs 5.9 megs, has 136 HTTP requests, and took almost 3 minutes to load. And then there's all these parallax pieces of crap out there, these one-page scrollers. And this is actually for Grolschbier with like a really pompous statement. No one's ever changed the world by being boring. But actually, 24.29 megs. That's like downloading an entire album of really shitty music. 388 requests. It's ridiculous. If your website is 15 megs, it's not HTML5, it's stupid. I love that quote. That's great. But nothing beats this Briefcakes, which is a cake company, which is fitting because the thing weighs 65 megs, which is massive. Holy crap. Performance isn't just, you know, about it being slow and people are going to leave. This is an accessibility issue. Whenever Obama came out with his responsive site, I asked my cousin, who has a company-issued BlackBerry, I said, hey, can you fire up Obama's site on your phone? And this is what he sent back to me. It says, a request entity too large. Basically just like, nope, not even going to try. not even going to do it. Oh, come on, but that's BlackBerries. Nobody uses BlackBerries, right? Barack Obama uses a BlackBerry. Oh, man. I wonder if he could even access his own site. So why is this happening? Why is all this performance stuff so terrible? Well, performance is invisible, right? You know, it's like this, it's this underlying thing. You can't mock up performance in Photoshop, right? You can't just tack it on to the end of a Gantt chart and say, this is where we do performance. It's like it's this underlying thing that needs to be addressed throughout. But the problem is that too often any talk about performance goes into geek land like way too quick, right? It's like the next sentence after performance involves like far futures expires headers and e-tags and caching and minifying. And it's just like anybody that isn't a hardcore developer, their eyes glaze over, they check out of the conversation. That's why I've been talking about sort of elevating performance, not just as a technical best practice, but as an important design feature. It has to become that, right? More people need to care about this. If the whole Facebook cluster fudge taught us anything, is that people care about performance, right? You'd be at parties every now and then, you know, you inevitably get asked, oh, what do you do? And then I say, oh, I work in mobile. People are like, Facebook sucks! As if it's my fault or something. But it's like, you know, they have this visceral reaction to this, and it's not because the navigation is unintuitive or people don't care, you know, the timeline redesign wasn't elegant or whatever. They're saying it because it's slow as crap, right? They had to redesign the whole thing because it's slow as crap. That's it. That's a design feature, right? So it's not just that we need to talk about performance as design. You need to acknowledge that good performance is good design, right? This is my favorite little gut check tool right here, which is, this is MobiTest. You just slap in a URL, and it will actually fire it up on a real device and spit back all the performance stats to you. How long it takes to load, how big it is, give you a waterfall chart, all that stuff. Really, really great. The next principle of adaptive design is that of enhancement. Too many conversations I see around responsive web design is about like serving up this one-size-fits-all experience that just sort of squishes in between viewports, right? There's more to it than that. And again, I think that those more thoughtful than others are going to acknowledge that. But what we're really talking about here is this concept of progressive enhancement, right? That instead of sort of starting with this desktop approach and trying to cram it all down into these small screens, right? We want to start with, you know, the constraints of the mobile environment and build up the experience, right? And so instead of trying to worry about how all your stuff is going to fit in there and how all your features are going to fit in there, you instead start to think, well, how could I exploit this extra, you know, white space? How could I begin to exploit all these extra device capabilities, right? And it's important to acknowledge that it's not about building lowest common denominator experiences. Like Jeremy Keith says, it's just about starting there. Right? It's just about starting at that lowest common denominator. That doesn't mean that you can't make great things. Right? We have all this stuff. This is Modernizer, all these different features we could detect and make, you know, build great things and check for them and introduce things into the experience. You know, talk about mobile web apps and stuff like that. I think that immediately, whenever you start talking about mobile, a lot of people are like, app, immediately. It's just like, mobile app. But it's like, there's more to it than that. I think that too many people sort of have this, you know, this pompous sort of mentality about all this, where it's just like, well, all these, you know, iOS and Android, they have like really robust JavaScript, you know, capabilities. Or, no, not really, you know. I just say support isn't binary, right? It's not that JavaScript can fail, it's just that it's will. Are you guys familiar with Clout? There's like, sorry if you work there, but I can't stand it. It's like the most egotistical, like social metrics, blah. I want to be famous. But this is, you know, this is Zach Leatherman commenting on this. Twitter threw some error, some JavaScript error, and this is the result, what happened on their site. Right? And he says, all my JavaScript code and third-party code won't have errors, so I could ignore progressive enhancement. Right? That's lousy right there. whenever Obama's site came out, he implemented this nice little Facebook slider navigation pattern. And Stephanie Rieger took a deeper look on all these devices. And here's what she found. The menu failed, never even opened. Suddenly, the site was without navigation at all. Here's where it worked, and here's where it didn't work. That's a pretty big deal, right? If you look at these devices too, I mean, like these are iPods and Androids and Windows phones and stuff. They support JavaScript. It just, failed. So we need to be more considerate about that. It isn't this binary on-off switch. Oh, the user went in and switched off their JavaScript. No. It's important to understand that, not everything needs to be some crazy next level app experience, right? I spend a lot of time looking at spinners, a lot. It's like terrible rims, right? There's LinkedIn, and it's just like, this is after they redirect me 3 times. It's just like spin, 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 and come back the next time, spin, spin, spin. Are you familiar with Paper LI at all? They spam your Twitter feed with, the Daily Digest is out. But they got lots of spinners. They got this spinner. They got this spinner. This guy. They got spinners to the left. They got spinners sitting on top of spinners. It's just like, it's ridiculous. And whenever you think about what their service actually does, it's just generating a list of links to articles that click to other pages. It's like, talk about just amazingly complex, right? This is Fast Company's website, and this is me clicking on a link to an article. White screen, black screen, preloader, 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 change colors. Animate preloader over spinner. Let's watch that again. This is phenomenal amount of effort just to render some text on a page. And it's all because, it's mobile. We got to make it this app experience. This is ridiculous, right? Whenever I look at these things, I always think of David Lee Roth, like it's ridiculous, over the top, and almost entirely unnecessary. Right? We're finding that actually, like Twitter and stuff, when they realized this, that their client-side architecture is actually leading to a slower performance when it came to like rendering tweets and stuff like that. So, all right, Hotshot, I know that you like your progressive enhancement and stuff, but like I will concede that there are certain experiences like BlackBerry Angry Birds right here. Launched Redbird, you missed. Launched another Redbird, slightly softer. You hit an ice thing and knocked over a woodblock. Like, some experiences just can't, get to that level of fidelity that you need, right? At some point in time, like, Angry Birds stops being Angry Birds. And I found this, my buddy, he worked on, this Nike ID thing where you're able to sort of change the color of all your shoes and customize them, and it spins around and stuff like that. And like, you found that, well-intentioned, but like it just wasn't the same experience, like just like filling out a form, like swoosh, yellow, whatever. So there are instances wherever progressive enhancement just doesn't work, but I'd say that they're very much in the minority. I like to think of this stuff as web standards, as sort of foundational work. It's concrete, right? And concrete is boring, is bland, it's gray. Doesn't do too much on its own, right? But at the same time, it allows all this great stuff to be built on top of it, right? It's also important to understand that there's a difference between support and optimization, right? There's not enough time in the day to test on literally every single device out there. But at the same time, we need to be inclusive. I think that too many times we look at our stats and we're like, oh, wow, we see a lot of stuff coming from iOS. Well, okay, that's fine, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to lock everybody else out. It's important to understand that these people have different expectations. My cousin, the geologist on his BlackBerry, isn't expecting some crazy multi-pinch, 3D transformed experience. He's just trying to get some stuff done, trying to get to some content. The last principle of adaptive design is that of being future friendly. what that comes down to is acknowledging and embracing unpredictability, understanding that things are going to change, right? You come back to this picture again, all these question marks, and nobody knows. Nobody knows what's right around the corner. You go to the bathroom, you come back, and bam, Google comes out with some crazy shit like Google Glass, and you're like, okay, well, this is happening. I need to do something about it, I suppose. Right? So there's no such thing as being future-proof. Nobody could say anything is future-proof, but that doesn't mean that we can't do things that better prepare us for what's in store, right? What this comes down to is focusing on what really matters. Because people's capacity for bullshit is rapidly diminishing, right? When you look at this page, this isn't, the best example of web design ever, but it's certainly not the worst. But if you look at this highlighted area here, this is the only reason why anybody would ever visit this page. Yet it's given such a small percentage of the screen real estate, right? In case that isn't explicit enough, there you go, right? I was on a dictionary website and I was looking for a definition, and I was scrolling and I couldn't find what I was looking for. I was like, it's like this tiny little cube. That's the only reason you exist. Oh, man, it's miserable. So we need to focus, right? We need to focus because, if we don't do it, our users are going to do it for us. If you don't like your reading experience on the web, you could go to a site use a service like Readability or Instapaper, Safari Reader, Flipboard. Have a much better reader experience, right? Don't like ads? AdBlock Plus. Don't like TV commercials? Use TiVo or DVR. Hulu Plus still playing ads even after you shell over a bunch of money to them? Pirate Bay, BitTorrent. I'm not necessarily recommending these things. I'm just saying that people find a way to circumvent bullshit. And they'll put up with your crap for a little while, but in time, you'll find that you will just be left in the dust. You will be forgotten. You need to focus. The other aspect of this is, we need to start getting our content more prepared to go more places, right? We have to invest in really strong content, context-agnostic APIs, right? Make clean data, store clean data, and get it ready to pipe to things like Google Glass and stuff like that. But historically, we've been treating these things like web publishing platforms and stuff like that. Karen McGrain does a lot of great talking about, how we need to think beyond that. Right? We need to get our content ready to go more places and think of our content like water, as Josh Clark says, sort of channeling Bruce Lee, right? He's like, think of your content like water that's able to flow into all these different containers. Really, really like that. Right? So get your content ready to go anywhere because it's going to go everywhere. And again, we don't know what's going to be underneath Christmas trees 2 years from now, but that's the stuff that we need to be designing for today, right? As Josh says, when it comes to the web, the more backwards compatible you are, the more forward compatible you're likely to be. I like to say that what we're dealing with now is like boot camp for tomorrow's insanity. So these are the principles of adaptive design. I think that they're a pretty reasonable checklist, right? For any sort of strategy, design, development, decisions, whatever. It's like, does it follow these principles? And if not, can we justify this, or do we need to go back to the drawing board? So, sort of the next part is talking about sort of a specific site I did, like a little demo I did for Google's HTML5 Rocks website, which is sort of an online here's what's latest and greatest in HTML5, and it's like, it is terribly out of place just because all the other pieces of content on that site are like, here's how you build a laser beam with JavaScript, or here's how you clone yourself with Get User Media API. And it's like, here's how you make a web page. All right. But yeah, so this is the basic gist of it. Hey man, chill out, chill out. It's cool. But yeah, so this is the basic gist of the site. Really, really simple, not the most complex, not the best example of responsive web design ever known to man, but it's just about trying to apply these principles to my stuff. So what we'll do is sort of go through the different components of the web page, sort of top to bottom, left to right, and just sort of look at each thing in more detail. So Exhibit A, the masthead, the header of your website. Really simple advice here, just get to the meat, right? People don't come to your website to look at your logo and your navigation. I see a lot of responsive web designs that like sort of burn like 7 different screen links with their header information before they actually get to the content. Like get to the core content. That's why they're there. Exhibit B, the logo. Make the logo bigger, says every client ever. Little do they know, it actually makes a whole lot of sense. We got all these Retina screens. Everybody's freaking out about Retina screens left and right. And as it turns out, you could actually create larger assets with minimal file size increase, or better yet, just resolution independent graphics, and simply scale them down, and they look nice and crisp on these high-res screens. Some guy in the Netherlands made a really great sort of discovery that actually JPEG's compression rate contributes more to its file size than its image dimensions. So as a result, he's able to scale up larger, or take JPEGs, scale them down, bounce them out larger with higher compression rates, and they're actually less file size than the base image that I was going from. It is pretty crazy, and whenever you scale them down and view them on these sort of high-res displays, they still look really crisp and sharp and stuff, so that's pretty cool. Exhibit C, navigation. This is my friend Quincy. Quincy's a great friend, but and I say great friend because he's the kind of guy that wouldn't mind if I take the most embarrassing picture of him from Facebook and show it to all you people without asking him. So thanks, Quincy. But Quincy's a great friend, but whenever we were living here, we didn't have a chance to see each other as much as we'd like to, right? We'd see him maybe once every month, once every other month. Recently, my wife and I moved from New York here to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the day before we were about to move, my wife got super, super sick. And my buddy Quincy came in and he was like, yeah, sure, I'll help you move. And he helped us pack up. He drove 7 hours across the state of Pennsylvania, helped us unpack. He spent the whole weekend, took a whole weekend out of his time. That's like very much the definition of a great friend, right? So what the hell does this have to do about navigation? Well, I think that navigation should be like my friend Quincy, right? Where he's there when you need him to be, but cool enough to give you your space, right? He was willing to sacrifice a whole lot, even though he's not a friend that we see all the time, right? But starting to see these things happen, right? These responsive websites. This is actually 3 different pages of a responsive website. And this is the navigation across all of them. They become that annoying friend that's like calling you up all the time. Hey, what are you doing? Hey, want to hang out? Hey, want to hang out? Hey, you want to go to brunch? Hey, what are you doing? Hey, want to go to the movies? It's like, get out of my face. So a quick way to solve this problem, right, is take the menu and sort of tuck it underneath like a menu icon, and then you can tap on that and it'll slide it down. It's there. It's accessible, but it's out of your way, right? Keep you focused on the core content. Exhibit D, search form. Search is really, really big, especially on mobile. I get asked a lot, especially around navigation. People are like, Brad, I have a website with 17 layers of navigation. I'm like, how does that work in a responsive environment? It doesn't. But I always say that, if you have a site that is that massive, prioritize search, right? Make it easy for people to get to where they need to get to. Also, there's a quick little tip, use the right HTML input type, and it'll pull up a nice contextual search virtual keyboard on your devices, which is pretty neat. Add a little bonus there. Product info. 79% of people are using their smartphones in stores to help with purchases. So, having this sort of product information, just like really basic, at a glance overview of what the product is, how much it costs, and sort of how popular it is, can help not just people that are on the site looking to purchase it there out, but also help these people that are in stores looking to make a purchase, right? Product images. Let's talk about carousels. I hate carousels with a burning passion. So I say, make sure you actually need one. I think that most carousels exist to prevent people from beating the shit out of each other in meetings, right? I want to be on the home page. I want to be on the home page too. Carousel, everybody wins, right? Come on board. Carol, get over here. Get on the carousel. But yeah, so make sure you actually need one. There's been, Eric Onion at Notre Dame University has not one, but 2 carousels on Notre Dame's website. And he recently published some stats about how it gets like a 1% interaction rate. And I suspect that that's very much the case for a lot of these other carousels and stuff as well. So see what you could do. You know, pull up some stats and really see if people are actually using them and publish those stats. If you do need to make them, for whatever unholy reason, make sure you cycle through like items, right? I see a lot of carousels that's just like this grab bag, venerable, like, just crappy content inside of them. It's like, here's our summer sale. Like us on Facebook, like us on MySpace, like us on Friendster. It like goes back in time as you cycle through the carousel, right? Only load what you need. If you have 40 slides in your carousel, please don't load all 40 of them. That's pretty no duh. Be explicit with navigation. Sorry, but these 3 little dots are insufficient way of communicating a carousel to the end user. But it's elegant, right? All these visual designers are like, oh, please. It's so nice and elegant and sexy and iOS-y. I've spent enough time behind a one-way mirror to know that people skip right over that. So. I really like Yahoo's old mobile web experience. They got these nice, explicit previous and next buttons. They let you know where you're at. You're always cycling through stories. I think that that's really great. So, also, you know, give hints to the fact that other content exists, and treat touch as an enhancement. This is Zappos's mobile site, and they have this really nice little overhang that basically tells the user, oh yeah, like there's more stuff here. Why don't you swipe and find out? But not all devices, not all browsers support touch events. So this is Opera Mini, and unfortunately, you can't get over to that other content. Even though it's on a touch device, it doesn't necessarily mean it supports the touch events to make that happen. So just sort of keep that in mind. That's a quick fix, right? Just include an arrow, something. Product form. Again, this is using the right input type, right? We could use the input type number, which will bring up this OK numeric input pad instead of the alphabet, and that's fine, but we could do better, right? We could incorporate this pattern attribute and actually pull up and trigger this nice chunky fat digits for our fat thumbs. So that's super nice. All these things go a long way just to make the experience a little more enjoyable, a little less painful, right? Share buttons. I see these things everywhere, and we just sort of casually toss them into our pages. But there's a problem. They're so heavy. They're so miserably heavy. Again, we're talking about how performance is really, really crucial. Zerb did some research and found that they weigh 246K just to add those 3 little chiclets to your website. That is staggeringly huge, right? So the fine people at the Filament Group came out with what they call social count, which is this nice, progressively enhanced social widget that weighs like 2K or something. And you know, you can hover over these things, and then it'll go out and fetch them and Ajax them in and stuff. All just nice little things to keep the experience snappy, keep people focused on, you know, what they're really there to do, which is, you know, to buy a product, to read a story, to whatever. Find nearby. Now's a good time to talk about this context business, right? This is the context we've been used to. You know, of course our users are comfortable. Of course they're stationary and focused and caffeinated. You know, of course, they have efficient input methods like a mouse and a keyboard. They're on a capable browser, on a big screen, and a fast connection, and a powerful CPU. Of course, as we all know, you know, this context is totally out the window anymore, right? We use our devices anywhere and everywhere. And Karen McGrain has a great post about how, you know, mobile context is more than just this sort of concept of being local, right? But at the same time, you know, if we come back here and look, you know, find nearby. It's a nice little enhancement, right? You know, geolocation is supported on a whole lot of mobile browsers, and you know, most desktop browsers and stuff as well. So it's a nice little enhancement, right? Find this product near me. Okay. So that's that. I also found that just like asking questions, you know, goes a long way. You know, why might a user be accessing this while they're on the bus? Why might somebody be visiting on a tablet? Do their goals change, right? How could I help them? How could I help them without necessarily, you know, rearranging the entire experience for them? This is a big one right here. This concept of sort of this auxiliary content, right? So let's come back to the stat that 86% of responsive sites send the exact same content to small screens as they do large screens. That is a huge problem. Like, has anybody ever wanted to like just show up to an airport and be like, put me on a plane to anywhere? I trust you, lady behind the counter, that you're not going to send me to Gitmo. Am I the only one that's ever wanted to like just go to a flight to anywhere in the world? Okay, all right, well, I'm alone in this, but anyways, I was thinking more about this. I'm like, man, that would be so cool, just show up and be like, bam. But then I started thinking more about it. I'm like, what the hell would I pack, right? Because I could end up in Jamaica, which is awesome, pack my Speedo, be great, but I could end up in Siberia, right? So I have to pack my snowshoes now, right? I have to pack my big bulky parka. That's what our websites are doing, right? Our websites are going to all these different places. They're going to, you know, really limited experiences, and they're going to really robust experiences. So we need to do something about it, right? We can't, you know, what about just showing up to the airport with what we know are the essentials, and, you know, but also show up with sort of some, you know, instructions for whenever we get to our location, right? If I'm going to be in a tropical location, Amazon Prime me in some malaria juice or something. Scott Gell calls this aggressive enhancement. I absolutely love that phrase. I hope it catches on. Aggressive enhancement sounds so hardcore. But here's what we're looking at here. So this is a web page, right? And the thing is the thing that's defined by the URI, right? So whenever your friend shares something on Facebook and it says, hey, check out this picture of cute kittens, and you say, yes, please, and you click on that link, what do you expect to find? Cute kittens, right? Yeah. So that's the thing, right? Without that thing, you will be sorely disappointed. But in addition to that thing, there's all this other stuff on a page, right? That might not be bullshit. You might not be able to get rid of it, but you might have things like comments. You might have things like, you know, share this. You might have related pictures of cute kittens. You might have sort of all this other stuff. What we could do is sort of offload that stuff to their own little fragments and just simply provide links out to them. And so what that does is that keeps, you know, the experience lightweight and sort of keeps people focused on the task at hand, right? So that's what I'm doing with my little demo, where I have these related shirts, which are these other images, and then I have all these reviews and stuff. And that stuff's important, right? We need to be able to show that stuff eventually if the user asks for it, but it's not required to make a purchase, right? So we're trying to keep people focused on the core task, but still provide access to that stuff, right? And then whenever the screen size becomes large enough to accommodate all that extra stuff, we could sort of suck it in, you know, sort of via Ajax. It's sort of like this, which is like awesome Power Rangers stuff, right? We got everything sort of coming in. Oh, if the audio was working, you guys would be blown away right now. It's like the ultimate experience, right? But here we go. We're pulling in our related content. Page is starting to take shape. Here comes the comment form. Oh, man. Bam, full-blown web page. Yes. So, so yeah, that's Mighty Morphin Power Rangers explaining progressive enhancement. All right. So this has two key advantages, right? Scannability and performance. Let's talk about scrolling for a second. I found that we scroll sort of three, there are three use cases for scrolling on mobile, not necessarily on the web, but just in general, right? We're either going back through time, we're going through a group of items, or we're diving in deep into content. So we might be scrolling through our Facebook or Instagram feed, Twitter feed or email or whatever, and you're going back in time and things are getting older. You're going through a group of items, right? You're going through a group of contacts or artists in Rdio or Spotify or whatever. Or you're diving in deep to a singular piece of content. I'm very intrigued by this Nigerian prince email. It says that I could win $35 million. Holy cow, I'm certainly going to scroll down and view more there. Or, this article is really fascinating. I want to read more. You're scrolling down. But what I found is that we're always scrolling through a singular content type, right? And so much I bring this up because so many of these responsive designs oftentimes just sort of stack content on top of each other. It's like, wow, what do we do with our sidebar? I don't know, we'll put it under there. What do we do with our other sidebar? I don't know, we'll put it under that one. It's sort of like going through your Facebook feed and then you get halfway down the page and then you're all of a sudden scrolling through your emails. You're like, where am I? So this is this. I have these other pieces of content, and I could have included them there, but I decided to sort of try to keep things nice and compact. To contrast, this is an earlier version of Obama's website, and you had Obama, Clooney, and you with the email form to sort of sign up for it. And then you have these touts. Where you're like, all right, new donors, and then record and brief. All right, well, let's scroll down to find out more. Oh, there's a truth team in the very latest. And no, we're going to talk, there's a donate button. Or there's a block quote, there's another title, there's some social buttons, there's some images, there's some more images, there's some more images, there's some more social buttons, there's a really long block quote, there's a title tag, there's some more 2012 stories later on in the week. Okay, this is a Twitter handle, we keep going. There's a bulleted list, see more, take action, watch a video, local events, spread the word, Twitter, see more, choose your state, and then we finally get to the edge of the page. Holy shit. That's just ridiculous. I especially love how take action is way at the bottom. Just take action. That's just, scrolling through all this disparate content is not a good user experience. So we need to think about how to handle that, right? Things like progressive disclosure, sort of tightening up, long blocks of content into sort of digestible bits, and then letting the user scan over those and then decide where they want to go. That's a good idea, right? So footer navigation, I don't have really too much to say, only it's all right to be redundant, right? Having your main nav in the header and having your main nav in the footer isn't a bad user experience. It gives users an out, right? Especially mobile users. They get to the end of the page and it's like, well, where do I want to go next? You give them that opportunity to pivot instead of leaving them hanging. Same thing with a back to top link. There's also this idea of this call number, right? We have these like a phone number. Believe it or not, telephones can make telephone calls, and that's a pretty cool concept. You heard it here first, folks. Phones make phone calls. So you could simply provide a link to a telephone number, and then basically it will initiate the phone call right from the browser. That's really cool. I know I've been giving Obama's site a hard time, but this is actually really cool, what they did during the election. They have this call tool that allows users to make calls on the candidate's behalf. Hey, or who are you voting for? Blah, blah, blah. This is an example of where a mobile experience just beats the pants off of a desktop experience. Because if you had to fire this up on a desktop computer, you'd have to look at the number, you'd have to transcribe it into your phone, lots of room for error, really laborious and time-consuming and whatever. With this, you just tap on the number and it initiates the phone call. That's really, really good. That's probably why I got reelected. Probably not, actually. But yeah, and then the last thing is just this back to top thing. Again, it's like, did you like the ride? You want to do it again? All right, back to the top. So that's that, top to bottom, left to right. There's a whole lot more that goes into this multi-device web design stuff. This is just one page, but it's sort of to try to prove a point that there's just little bits and pieces and considerations that we could think about to make the experience work really well on all these different mobile devices, on all these tablets, on all these web-enabled computers. Well, let's not forget, like, this stuff is really, really hard. We're just getting started with it, but it's absolutely necessary, right? Like, we are responsible for keeping the web open and viable and accessible and wonderful, right? I really love this quote from Benjamin Franklin. He says, whenever you're finished changing, you're finished, right? I think that that's especially true in our world. It's also important to understand that, whenever I get into these conversations about responsive design and separate sites and blah, 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 people get really heated about it. Wow, right? Like, this ain't religion, right? This is web design. Like, just chill out, So let's also face it, this is really, really fun. I mean, we have, we're creators. We like solving puzzles and stuff. This is a great puzzle to solve, right? So here's some stats. 6 billion worldwide mobile subscriptions. They're not evenly distributed, unfortunately. But that's a pretty huge number, and that number is only going to grow. What's even more staggering is that only 2.4 billion people on this planet have access to the web. Like, does that blow your mind? That blows my mind. This thing that we've had since, what, like 1997? Or whatever, like, we've been so used to this thing, and it's changed our lives in so many ways, and like the vast majority of people still don't have access to it. I think it's absolutely incredible and sort of a humbling stat, right? But here we are, right? We have these 6 billion mobile connections. We have 2.4 billion people with access to the web. And this is what's happening, right? We're seeing these numbers grow. We're seeing more people getting online. We're seeing more and more people's lives being enriched from having access to the web. We're fortunate enough to, like, our grandparents and stuff, like, you might have been lucky to like live through like the TV revolution or something, before that, radio or whatever. Like, we have not one but two of like humanity's greatest achievements. I'm not being facetious here at all. It's like, that's like mobile technology and the internet, holy crap. And here we are right in the middle, right? Like, what an opportunity, seriously. Like, I can't think of a better problem to have than to figure out what the web is, who it can reach, where it can go, and why it matters. Thanks, everyone.